So hi everyone, it's Shelley Cox here from Montoux. With me I've got Stephen, who has just published his first article in the Actuary magazine. So I understand, Stephen, the article's broadly around the role of data science and optimization in life insurance pricing, fairly meaty topic. Can you give us a bit more of an overview of what the article's about?
Sure. So there are two main themes. One is a technical view, working through the steps that are required for price optimization. So going through building up price to sales sensitivity models, developing proxy models to the liabilities, and then getting into the details of the optimization algorithms themselves. The other theme is really around how you can do optimization in an ethical manner. So one of the things we find in the UK, the treating customers fairly requirements are taken very seriously. And I think optimization is sometimes viewed with a bit of concern that it's not always in the best interests of policyholders. But I think one of the things that's actually really interesting about optimization is the ability to directly incorporate customer-focused constraints into the optimization algorithm itself. So thinking about things like how you can limit cross-subsidy across a book of policies, how you can incorporate things like constraints on claims ratio to make sure customers are getting a fair payout, and also looking at how premia vary across different segments to make sure that there's a fairness in the way that they evolve across different ages or sums assured.
Cool. And obviously you've had to research into some depth the topic, and writing these articles is always a learning process. What emerged for you as some of the key insights in pulling the article together?
So I think two key themes really came out for me. One is the importance of getting the price to sales sensitivity models working well. And I think this is something that has a lot of value, even if you're not doing optimization, if you just want to improve pricing processes. I think really understanding how price changes can affect sales volumes is a really huge step forward in your ability to do pricing. But there are definitely some challenges with that, I think, particularly in the UK, given some of the restrictions on data that is available directly to insurers. You have to be careful about how you can kind of cut some of that analysis. But I also know that some of the data providers have a lot of additional data that actually, if used in the right kind of way, can add a lot of power to that sensitivity modeling, while still complying with the rules around what data can be used. The other big theme was really that optimization itself is a bit of a journey. I think that whilst you may want to get to a situation where you've managed to collapse your optimization down into something quite manageable, if you're going to be applying this on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of value in going through a kind of exploratory journey to understand the impact that different objectives and different combinations of constraints have on the outcomes that you're able to achieve. And I think one of the things that I was quite surprised by was really just how much of a difference different combinations of constraints can make in the outcome, particularly when you're applying these constraints at the segment or the sort of model point level. How you manage those constraints makes a huge difference to the outcome. So I think there's a lot of value in exploring those different combinations and really understanding from a business standpoint what makes the most sense in terms of meeting business objectives whilst also giving a fair outcome to policyholders.
Thanks for that. And how did you find the process of pulling together a pretty technical article? I know a lot of effort went into it.
So it was a really interesting process. I think Dan and Thomas did a great job providing a lot of the real depth to the technical content in the article. It's having come from a fairly technical background, I'm always constantly surprised and amazed by just how deep some of these technical things go. I'd had a lot of experience in proxy models, but actually seeing that taken to another level is really interesting. I think the other angle is really just seeing how the different bits fit together. There's a lot of complexity in how you wrap together the actuarial modeling, the data science, with some of the technology and the computational power required to make it all work in practice. So it's really interesting kind of seeing that come together in a kind of practical case study.
Okay, great. And just to finish off, have you got any examples you want to share of where you've seen this done really well and the sort of value it creates?
Yeah, so I think we've certainly seen a couple of cases where customers we've worked with have managed to go on that journey with optimization, kind of building up the different levels of complexity as you improve the granularity that you're working with the optimization, really understanding what that means from a business standpoint, and then being able to actually condense that down into something that makes sense on a day-to-day pricing basis. So that's been really interesting to see it in practice.
Great. Well, thanks for that. And I look forward to reading the article over the next few days.
Thanks, Shelley. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.